George Crum here. Today we're talking about boating accessories. This is part 3, and I'm up at the front of my boat. Going to talk about some of the things that I have up here to help make my life a little bit easier, my fishing more effective. And one of those things is some sort of anchor system. Anchor system, obviously we're going to need one for fishing halibut and Cook Inlet or something like that. But even in other places, an anchor is a critical piece of safety equipment. So I have an anchor bracket. Actually, I have 2 of them on this boat. You can see I have one mounted in the traditional location, and right now there's not an anchor nest there. I pulled the anchor nest out of this Leelock quick change base, and I placed it over here in my spare location. Now, if I was going to be anchoring today, the anchor nest, the Leelock Columbia River anchor nest here, would be in that position, and my bow mount would be on this quick change base out of the way. And you can actually run the bow mount from this location here, but you don't want to anchor from this location. Leelock makes good stuff. I like it. It's relatively low profile, but very strong. It's anodized aluminum. It'll last you for a lifetime. As long as you own your boat, this stuff's going to work. Other companies do make good anchoring equipment too. I have Fish Fighter Products anchor nest. It's a little bit different design than the Leelock one. It's bigger. It takes up a little bit more space. And one thing I would recommend, if you are thinking about getting a bow mount, imagine back trolling in the lower Kenai at the pastures at the tail end of the incoming tide. Everybody's leaving because there's not enough current anymore to back troll. Well, with that bow mount, you'll be able to back troll longer than anybody who doesn't have one. So that alone is one reason to consider having one up in Alaska. But if you do it and your boat is big enough up front to put 2 different attachment points up here, like I have 2 quick change bases, you might want to consider doing that. That way you're not constantly hauling one piece of equipment off, like the bow mount, and putting it on the floor so that you can put your anchor up here. If you have enough space up here for 2 locations, it's worthwhile to consider having 2 bases installed in your boat. This piece of aluminum was actually fabricated for me by the boat manufacturer just so that I could do this. Some other things, obviously I've got a port to plug in my electric trolling motor here, but I have a second port down below, and it's a 12-volt port that allows me to plug in an extension cord to charge up my bow mount batteries. My onboard charger is actually inside this hatch down here, and so are my batteries. I have another charging port just like this one in the back of the boat for my starting battery and my house battery that runs my fish finders and stuff like that. Another thing I'll mention up here, cleats good to have. Some boats don't have these when they come from the factory. Mine didn't. I actually drilled holes and put this up here. You never know when you're going to need a cleat here to be towed or something like that. You can see that in my boat I have a second fish finder up here in the front. I find that I don't use it all that often, but it can be handy. And a good example of that is if I'm running the boat from back there in the tiller, it's not a good idea for me to be taking my eyes off, looking ahead of me to look down at the fish finder to see what the depth is, because my fish finder in the back is back in the back left corner. With this fish finder, if I'm running up the river, especially in situations where I may have shallow water, I can turn this fish finder on, and I can actually see the depth readout from way back there 20 feet away at the tiller, which can warn me if I'm heading for something shallow. Let's say you're running up this Susitna from the Deshka back up to Deshka Landing or something like that. This can save you. So that's basically it for the front of my boat. We'll talk about the bow mount and how to use it in a later episode, but for now, that's it.